Say it again.
It's going really well so far. What's been different about doing this show, and what you would want to take forward for the future? How's that?
Well, a great thing is it's instrumental music for us writing. It's totally different from writing pop songs. There's no lyrics, really. We had a script to follow, which I think we really like that every day you go in the studio and you know what scene you've got to write and what it's got to represent in the show. It's a really sort of refreshing change for us.
Yeah, as for the future, oh god, that's loud, isn't it? As for the future, we kind of do a lot of choreography now, and I think it'd be quite nice to sort of reinvent the rock show and see what we can do there. But also, I quite like, there was a rehearsal on earlier this week, and they were changing the lights with these trains that went up and down. I quite like the idea of choreography using machines.
Mechanistic choreography.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been done, but it might be quite interesting.
Could be a good way to go. Javier, you quite rarely, in fact, you had the music like at the beginning of rehearsals. We did lots of talking before, we made some changes, talking to Matthew Dunster, who was our dramaturg and helped write the original scenario from the Hans Christian Andersen story. So it's quite rare that you should have a full score at the beginning of rehearsals. But there's lots of other elements that are coming later, including some of the video, of course the lights, and the set, and I just wondered how that fitted together with what you had made on the music and what came into play with some of which I think we really only had a chance to look at actually once we were in the theatre.
Yeah, I'm so happy she's signing with my accent. I mean, funny enough, it's not. I normally have the score before I started work because I've always worked with dead composers. So they were with me from the beginning, and I didn't have to respond if I changed things about it. But it was a pleasure to have it. But then I also knew that I had constant communication with the boys about things that we may need to work theatrically. And they were very accommodating in doing these changes, especially throughout the previous bits of rehearsal. So it was great to have it from the beginning, and then great to feel organic towards the end. So it just worked quite all right, I think.
Because Paul, our DTR sound designer, did do quite a lot of work in terms of, I suppose, threading, linking some of the sections together and sound effects, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think it was a big wish of mine to have Paul Arditi, who I've always wanted to work with. Because I knew that he would give theatrical form to a lot of the linking. I mean, we just knew that we had, at the end of the day, we had a show to put on, a show that had to tell a story, and we know that he was the element that was going to be the glue between the music and the choreography.
Because we don't have long, because there's rather a lot of you, I would quite like to hand over, because I'm sure a lot of you are here especially to ask some questions. So if you've got some questions for the boys or for Javier, then put your hand up and shout very loud. Yeah, the gentleman there with the blue shirt.
Is there any of the music from the ballet which you might flesh out or add lyrics to at some later date, some of the beautiful melodies that might get lost to the big audience staying in the ballet, you'd like to put into the bigger, the Pet Shop Boys and Places Helen Flow?
So that gentleman was asking whether there's any of the music from this performance and show that they want to develop or take on in the future.
I don't think we have any plans to do that.
No, the record company would quite like us to put a vocal on the meeting, and I'd quite like Tiny Temper or someone to rap on the ground. Neither of those things are going to happen, so...
Some of it actually worked the other way around. The music in the competition was originally a song called "You're the Exception That Proves the Rule," and we made it into an instrumental. So I think that's probably the only one. The music for the meeting sort of existed. Chris wrote the initial theme for it 2 or 3 years ago, didn't you? And you said you had lyrics for it. But I've never heard. They're
too good for public listening.
So I think to answer your question, I don't think we're planning to. The meeting is which is the one in the back one. I think that would probably lend itself. But I personally never be able to think of any proper words for it. Next question.
Yes, at the end. Oh, sorry, I'll come back to you in a second. Bear with me.
Why did you choose this particular story by Hans Christian to base by anything else?
So why did Chris choose this particular story to base the ballet on?
Yeah, well, firstly, there's the title, which just leapt off the page, The Most Incredible Thing. I thought it sounded intriguing, and also it sort of led to sort of a very ambitious project. There's also a story which is just a traditional fairy tale on one level, you know, it's set in a kingdom, there's a love story, there's the good, the bad, there's the happy ending. And also thirdly, there's the clock, which, you know, lent itself to 12 different pieces of music which could be interpreted, you know, I imagined in quite an interesting dance style, so those three reasons, really.
It really is like the most disturbing title for a choreographer too. So yeah, it's a big tall order to do that one with the critics. But also, for me, it's the story that seems to have a lot of questions to answer, and the one that we seem to. It really was the one. The more we talked about, the more we felt that even 3 acts were not long enough to explain the depth of the character of the 3 principals. So it was just ideal. It was almost a pitch for a ballet in itself, the original story.
Okay, the lady in the middle there, yeah. So that question was about how it was for the boys to watch something rather than performing themselves, how it was to actually watch something that they had written rather than be performing in it.
Well, you'd think it'd be easier watching something rather than performing it, but actually it's just as nerve-wracking. It's very satisfying though to see someone interpret what you've done, and you know, the creative team's been incredible on this, and so it's just been a joy to be present at and to watch.
Was it very different? One of the things I was wondering was when you were writing it and Sven was orchestrating it, what you had in your mind and then what was made in the end. Was it a big difference? Did you go that far visually, or were you ready to take what came?
Well, we're not choreographers, but I do tend to dance in the bedroom, so, but my dancing skills are probably not quite what Javier's are.
I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, in my head, I had pictures from the story really, and when Javier was choreographing and putting the show together, Chris and I weren't even in the country for a lot of the time, and so and that was a deliberate decision not to hover around rehearsals, because I think we thought Javier works, you know, as an artist, and it was his creation at that point. We'd written the music, and he could do what he liked, and so it was very exciting to come back. Not very long, it was just last week, the dress rehearsal, and that was the first time we saw the whole thing on the stage. So we had total trust in Javier.
Are there any questions up here from people further up the theatre? Yes, at the front there.
Very interested in the clock and the names of the clock. Who came up with the names?
I can answer that. We put a list up in the rehearsal room and everybody wrote their names down. And then I took out, there was a load of religious ones that I took out and political ones that I took out because I felt like the ideas behind this piece were about artistic creation. So we sifted it a bit, and what you saw was the result of everybody's input.
I mean, the point of it, and it was a concept that came very early on about what number 12 meant in the final of the clock, is that the clock was about creation, but it was about whoever we have felt at one point or another that has changed our lives. So, you know, I had my own personal favorites, like Tennessee Williams, of course, But then everybody, between Katrina, Lindsay and myself, we started talking about people that have done a great deal of influence in our lives as artists before, and we also came together compiling the list, and then it was kind of fascinating to see the dancers coming up with their own list in a completely different generation. But then more importantly was people trying to read them very quickly and then realizing that maybe their own favorites had been missing from that list. So the debate was kind of open in only the course of 2.5 minutes. So already the fact that you have people that have changed your lives seemed to be what was the humanity of the final act, which the most incredible thing is not the object in itself, but the minds that actually create the incredible things.
Okay, one there and then over there. Are there any up at the top later? Yeah, okay, we'll come to you next. So, down here. Yeah.
Regarding songs, it is always asked what is written first, the music or the words, and how was it with the ballet? First, with the music was written, and then the dance moves were created, or was it vice versa, or was it in parallel?
So that was whether it was the music or the words or the dance, in which order it came. Do you want to answer that?
Well, first comes a lot of heartache and despair. Then comes the music, and then the rest of it.
Always the music comes first. You cannot create the first step without having the music first, so it was important that order was kept.
But actually the first thing we did was ask Matty to come in and do a treatment of the story, because the story is so short, it's just 4 pages long. It was one he wrote very late in his life. And so that was actually the first thing that we did, was to see whether it was possible to expand it into something more. So in a way the words came first, I suppose. There was someone over here.
Yep.
Yes?
To Chris and Neil, after the excellent and underrated Closer to Heaven, and then obviously this, are you tempted to go down the, dare I say, Mamma Mia route and do a Pet Shop Boys style full-blown musical with your known song?
So the question was about the vastly underrated Closer to Heaven, and then this, whether the boys are interested to do a Mamma Mia route with a full-blown musical with all their hits.
No.
Okay, just a couple more questions. There was someone right upstairs.
Mark, what do you think of the reviews that the ballet's been given in the national press?
So that question was about the reviews that we've been getting in the national press. I don't know if you started up there, but I couldn't hear you, so we'll come back to you.
Well, did anyone read the Daily Express review, which said that this ballet ended with a black wedding and misery? I don't know whether he was watching.
He obviously left before the end.
I just want to go back to someone up there. Yeah, go on, right at the back there. Is ballet a formula that the boys will work with again?
Yeah, I think we've really loved this experience. We always wanted to work in the musical theatre, and we wrote the musical Closer to Heaven you mentioned. And then suddenly there were a lot of pop musicals around. And this idea between Chris and Ivan Petrov came up with writing a ballet, it seemed like a very interesting thing that there wasn't pop stars queuing up to do at that point. And also it was a different form of musical theatre, where you could have a narrative and do it through music and dance. And I think, we've learned a lot from writing it. We couldn't have written this if we had written the music batch for Potemkin, I think, which we learned a lot from writing instrumental music. So I think if we had the right idea, or something approaches the right idea, we might do something like this again.
Can I say, just going back to the critics, our target audience was intelligent audience and not the critics.
Time for one more question.
Firstly, congratulations to Neil and Chris with some
follow strict criteria when you were approached to write the music? Or did you have a free run?
That question is whether the boys had to write to a strict criteria or whether they had a kind of free rein with what they wrote.
Well, that's the reason we approached Matthew Dunster, is because the actual story is only 3 pages and it's quite difficult to flesh that out, in terms of music. So Matthew Dunster filled it out and made it a lot easier for us to write the music too. So we were actually following his script quite closely. Without that, I don't think we could have started. It's not much of a template. We actually just put the film into the computer and we're actually writing directly to the scenes. And Matthew Dunster provided words for us to same as the film, really. Otherwise, I don't think we could have. I wouldn't know where to start, really.
Yeah, he called it a map for music, and I thought it was quite a good way to describe it. And I mean, really, you took that and adapted that, and then Javier, you did the same in your own way again.
And the script then changed from being a map for music to being a map for dance, just so we all would end up on the same destination, but taking different scenic routes somehow. And because also he also understood when he started knowing what the process of creation of dance was, for instance, with the final words, which are the most beautiful words, the most incredible thing is that no one was jealous. Well, dance that. And therefore it was really clear to me that I was really going to see. I wanted to see the words, the physicalization of words. So we came to that. I wanted to read them. I didn't want to dance them. I think it was more important. So it became a mutual respect to the final subject, which was really Hans Christian Andersen and what could be dance and extend. The main subject was going to be dance and the things that we wanted to read, because many of you hadn't read the story, we were going to show because it was as beautiful to see them as to dance them.
Great. That's it. Thank you very much, Chris.
It'd be nicer if this thing had a zoom function. That was quite distant.